Not every artifact we uncover offers clarity. Some only deepen the mystery. Buried in silence, entombed in earth, or hidden beneath layers of time, these objects don't shout their stories. They whisper riddles. Who crafted them? Why were they abandoned? What kind of mind saw the world so differently from ours? Across continents and centuries, real objects have emerged that defy simple classification. Some seem ahead of their time. Others are too large, too precise, or too strange to fit comfortably within the narratives we've built about the past. Yet they exist. Tangible, studied, and undeniably real, each one a quiet challenge to our understanding. This is not a journey through legend or speculation. These artifacts are not hearsay. They were unearthed, recorded, and in many cases preserved. Still, their meanings remain locked away, as if the past had deliberately chosen to leave behind puzzles without solutions. Let's begin where the gold was real, but the purpose was not. The story doesn't begin in a royal tomb or ancient temple, but in a vineyard. In 1924, two Bulgarian brothers, while tending their land near the village of Valchitran, struck something solid beneath the earth. It wasn't rock, it wasn't bone. It gleamed. They had uncovered gold, thick, heavy, and strangely shaped. What they found would become one of the most enigmatic hoards in European prehistory. 13 objects of nearly pure gold, weighing over 12.5 kilograms. The discovery included shallow hemispherical bowls, domed lids, a dish with a central hole, and one peculiar vessel with dual thick handles, almost modern in design. No inscriptions, no decorative symbols, just flawless metalwork from an unknown hand. Experts dated the objects to around 1300 BCE, placing them in the late Bronze Age. But here's the catch. They didn't fit neatly into any known culture. Many attribute the treasure to the Thracians, a confederation of tribes known for their craftsmanship, rituals, and warrior aristocracy. But even among Thracian finds, the Valchitran treasure is an outlier. Its purity, over 88% gold with traces of silver and copper, speaks of technical skill. Its forms, however, speak in riddles. Were they ritual vessels, solar emblems, parts of a ceremonial set for a now lost rite? Some archaeologists point to the object's peculiar handles and lids as evidence of astronomical or calendrical significance, perhaps used to track celestial events in rituals honoring nature or deities. Yet no associated burial, structure, or settlement was found near the site. The objects were buried barely 40 centimeters deep in unguarded earth. Not a tomb, not a temple, just dirt. Could this have been a hidden cache during political upheaval or conflict? Were they buried in haste, meant to be retrieved later by someone who never returned? Or were they intentionally hidden, not for safekeeping, but as part of a sacred act of sacrifice, returning gold to the earth from which it came? The silence around the hoard is as heavy as the metal itself. Without inscriptions or context, we're left with craftsmanship that whispers of ceremony but never explains its purpose. Gold, in many ancient societies, wasn't merely wealth, it was a medium of the divine. But here there is no altar, no god named, no king remembered. We're left with a paradox: immense value hidden without ceremony, tools of prestige buried without witness. Whatever meaning once surrounded the treasure has long since faded, leaving us with the form but not the function. And if such skill and wealth could vanish without a trace, what else might have disappeared? Into myth or the sun? From earthbound gold we now look skyward, to a bronze chariot that may have carried the sun itself. It was meant to move. Even after more than 3,000 years buried in a peat bog, its wheels still turned. In 1902, on the Danish island of Zealand, a farmer unearthed something extraordinary: a small bronze chariot drawn by a slender horse, pulling a gleaming disc plated in gold. Only later would archaeologists recognize what they were looking at, one of the most haunting and elegant relics of the European Bronze Age. Today, it is known as the Trundholm sun chariot. At just over 50 centimeters in length, it may seem modest in size, but its symbolism runs vast. Dated to around 1400 BCE, the object is believed to represent the sun, specifically the mythic journey of the sun across the sky drawn by a divine horse. It is one of the earliest surviving models of cosmological belief in prehistoric Europe. But while many agree on its solar significance, the details remain slippery. Why the wheels? Was this merely a model? Or was it used in actual ritual drawn along a path to mimic the sun's daily arc? The golden disc is decorated on one side, bright and radiant, while the other is bare bronze. Some suggest this duality reflects day and night, the perpetual cycle of death and rebirth, of sun and shadow. Others believe the object may have been a teaching tool for elite priests or shamans, or part of a larger ceremonial set long lost to decay. But it's what we don't know that lingers. The horse, slender and elegant, has no saddle, reins or rider. It leads the chariot blindly, unburdened, an image not of control but of surrender. Was this how the ancients imagined the cosmos? A solitary force dragging light across the sky, not by will but by fate. Fragments of similar solar symbolism appear in Norse mythology many centuries later, such as Sol, the sun goddess, pulled through the heavens in a chariot by divine horses. But the Trundholm chariot predates these stories by over 1,000 years. Was this object the myth's ancestor? Or was it born of a separate, now-forgotten belief system, one that lived in rituals, then vanished without record? No accompanying texts, no oral tradition, no burial context explain the chariot's use. It was likely broken and deliberately deposited into the bog, possibly as a sacrificial offering. But why destroy something so intricate, so symbolic? Was this the end of its ritual life, or just the beginning of ours as we try to reconstruct what once was sacred? A bronze horse pulled a golden sun through forgotten fields, and in doing so, it left behind a trail of questions stretching far beyond its wheels. And now we descend from solar journeys into shadows, into chambers filled not with light but feathers and silence. They weren't just a few scattered remains. They filled tunnels, thousands upon thousands of them. Mummified birds, row after row, stacked in niches carved into rock beneath the sands of Saqqara, Egypt's vast necropolis. Most were falcons and ibises, sacred animals linked to the gods Horus and Thoth. But it wasn't the presence of these birds that puzzled archaeologists. It was the scale. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, explorers uncovered underground catacombs near Saqqara's step pyramid that housed more than 4 million mummified animals, with birds making up the overwhelming majority. Some catacombs stretched for hundreds of meters, lined with jars and linen-wrapped remains. The so-called Falcon Necropolis was one of several such caches, each devoted to a single species, each carefully sealed. In ancient Egyptian religion, animals weren't mere symbols, they were divine incarnations. The ibis represented Thoth, god of wisdom and writing. The falcon embodied Horus, god of the sky and kingship. Pilgrims would offer mummified animals as votive gifts to gain divine favor. But at this scale, something feels different. Many of the bird mummies are surprisingly crude, hastily wrapped, containing only partial remains or in some cases no animal at all. This has led some researchers to believe that the practice became industrialized over time. Evidence now suggests that specialized breeding farms existed near temples, raising birds specifically for ritual slaughter. What began as sacred devotion may have morphed into a sprawling religious economy, an ancient spiritual industry fueled by demand, ritual obligation, and profit. Yet, even with this practical lens, questions remain. Why bury millions of these offerings in underground mazes? Why were they so meticulously sealed and preserved if many were symbolic fakes? And why so many? Some scholars argue these mass burials reflect societal anxiety, an effort to win divine protection in uncertain times. Others believe they were part of seasonal festivals, repeated for centuries. Still, the atmosphere within these catacombs feels heavy, not transactional. The silence, the sameness, the endless echo of wings that will never fly again. It suggests something more. A deep collective act of faith or fear or both. Today, many of these mummies lie untouched, sealed in corridors too narrow or unstable to excavate. What else rests inside? What ritual logic once governed this subterranean aviary? We may never know what prayers were spoken above as these offerings were lowered below. But from the stillness of feathers, we now move to stone walls that once burned, structures warped by a fire no one can explain. Scattered across the rugged highlands and coastal cliffs of Scotland lie the ruined remains of ancient hill forts, rough stone walls, weathered by centuries of wind and rain. But some of these forts hide a secret locked into their very structure. Their stones have melted. These are the Vitrified forts. Over 60 confirmed sites where parts of the walls have been subjected to such intense heat that the stones, partially liquefied, fuse together like glass. This is not a metaphor. It's a geological anomaly. The process of vitrification requires temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. conditions difficult to achieve even with modern technology, let alone during the Iron Age, when most of these forts were built between 700 BCE and 300 CE. The phenomenon was first documented in the 18th century, and for over 2 centuries, researchers have debated what it means. Was this a deliberate process? A method to reinforce walls by fusing them? Or was it an act of destruction, fortresses burned by invaders or ritual fire? Experimental archaeology has tried to replicate the effect using timber, peat and bellows. Some success has been achieved, but only under highly controlled conditions and only on small scales. None of the reconstructions come close to the sheer volume of vitrified stone found at sites like Dun Mac Snearchan or Tap o' Noth. That particular site, excavated in recent years, revealed a massive fortified enclosure at the summit of a mountain, its walls not only vitrified, but constructed with a complexity that suggests central planning and large-scale labor. And yet there are no written records from the people who built them, no inscriptions, no myths passed down, nothing but melted stone and earth. Some archaeologists suggest these were ceremonial burnings, forts ritually destroyed when abandoned. Others argue the vitrification was unintentional, caused by siege fires or lightning strikes, but those explanations rarely satisfy. Why would so many forts, scattered across different regions, show similar signs of intense, sustained heat? One theory even proposes the technique was known and then forgotten, a lost method of fortification abandoned when it proved too labor-intensive or dangerous. Another idea, more fringe but persistent, posits that the vitrification was a display of power, an ancient form of shock and awe. What is clear is that these walls were not simply built, they were transformed. Stone, reshaped by fire, locked into forms that defy casual explanation. They are relics of an age that burned with purpose, but left no record of why. And from these melted summits we descend again, not into heat but into darkness. A silence carved into chalk, where figures stare from the walls with eyes that have watched for centuries. It began with a shovel striking hollow stone. In August 1742, a worker digging a hole for a new bench post in Royston, Hertfordshire, uncovered a vertical shaft. Lowering himself down with a rope, he entered a circular underground chamber, cut directly into the chalk bedrock beneath the street. What he found inside was neither empty nor ordinary. The walls were covered in carvings. The chamber is roughly 2.5 meters wide and over 5 meters deep. The carvings, etched into the soft chalk, depict saints, knights, and strange, possibly pagan figures. There's St. Catherine with her wheel, St. Lawrence with his gridiron, and a crude crucifixion scene. But between them are other symbols: stars, crosses, floral patterns, and hooded figures that don't appear in any Christian canon. There are no inscriptions, no dates, and no clear narrative. Just stone, shadow, and silence. The age of the carvings remains uncertain. Some scholars believe they were made in the 14th century. Others argue for a 17th century origin. The most persistent theory links the chamber to the Knights Templar, a medieval military order dissolved in the early 1300s, under accusations of heresy and secret rites. The blend of Christian iconography with esoteric symbols in Royston Cave has fueled this speculation for centuries, yet no definitive proof has ever surfaced. Some say the cave was a Templar meeting place, hidden in plain sight beneath a crossroads. Others suggest it was a hermit's cell, a private chapel, or even a secret initiation chamber. What complicates things further is the chamber's design. It's not a natural cave, but a deliberately hollowed cylinder, with a niche that may have held an altar and footholds carved into the shaft for access. In the 19th century, parts of the cave were cleaned and even altered, damaging portions of the original artwork. What remains today is both too much and not enough, too much to be coincidence, too little to explain. No tools were found, no records of its construction, no mention in town archives. It's as though the cave was never meant to be known, only rediscovered. And even now, under modern lights, the figures carved into the wall seem to wait. Their outlines are worn, their meanings obscure, but their presence lingers, as if they still serve a forgotten purpose, long after their keepers vanished. And from these wordless watchers, we turn to another mystery, figures not hidden below but standing defiantly upright, their shapes unlike anything else in the ancient world. Long before the rise of emperors or samurai, before the construction of temples or the shaping of swords, there was the Jomon. For over 10,000 years, this ancient culture flourished across the islands of Japan, hunting, gathering and crafting with a sensitivity that defies their time. And among the pottery and tools they left behind, archaeologists began finding something else: small, humanoid figures, unlike anything seen before. They are called Dogū. At first glance, Dogū appear almost otherworldly. Most are small, just 10 to 30 centimeters tall, crafted from clay and often fired in open pits. But their shapes are what captivate. Some have wide, almond-shaped eyes that resemble goggles or visor lenses. Others have exaggerated hips, limbs, or torsos, and many appear to be wearing layered garments, belts, or armor-like plating. Some are armless, legless, or fused into one form, their purpose obscured by abstraction. Over 18,000 Dogū have been discovered, spread across hundreds of sites from Hokkaido to Kyushu. The oldest may date back to 14,000 BCE, though most come from the later Jomon period, between 1000 and 400 BCE. Despite the sheer number, not a single one bears writing. Japan had no script at the time, and no direct records explain their role. Were they fertility symbols? Many depict female characteristics: broad hips, swollen bellies, pronounced breasts, but others are androgynous or even genderless. Were they used in healing rituals, broken intentionally to transfer ailments to the figure before burial? Some bear cracks that seem deliberate, suggesting ceremonial destruction. Or were they representations of spirits, gods, ancestors, or intermediaries between the human and the divine? Modern interpretations range from grounded to speculative. Some scholars see the Dogū as part of a shamanic tradition, tools for spiritual journeys or rituals of transformation. Others note their anatomical oddities and speculate they may represent mythical beings or visions from altered states of consciousness. And, of course, in popular imagination, their goggle-eyed appearance has given rise to wilder theories: visitors from the stars, ancient astronauts misunderstood as gods. But none of these ideas, scholarly or fringe, can explain the consistency and care with which Dogū were made and buried. They weren't discarded. They were placed, often in ritual pits, sometimes broken first, sometimes whole, and they appear across generations and geography, suggesting a belief system both vast and deeply rooted, one that predated writing, yet expressed itself through form. Whatever the Dogū were meant to represent, they watched over their world in silence, and continue to do so now, their eyes fixed on a future they would never see. And from these strange faces of clay, we turn to a skull, massive, ancient, and so unlike ours that it may belong to a different kind of human altogether. It was found not by archaeologists, but by chance, and then hidden for decades. In 1933, during the Japanese occupation of northeastern China, a laborer working on a bridge near Harbin unearthed a human skull buried in the sediment along the Songhua River. Fearing confiscation, he wrapped it up and concealed it in an abandoned well. It stayed there, forgotten, for over 80 years. Only in 2018 did the skull resurface, when the man's family handed it to Chinese scientists. What they held was astonishing: a massive, nearly intact human cranium, dark and fossilized, with features both familiar and alien. The skull was larger than any modern humans, with a low brow, wide eye sockets, and a thick, robust structure. Yet its brain volume matched ours, and the face was surprisingly delicate, flat, with large cheekbones and a broad nose. It didn't fit into any known category. Dated to at least 146,000 years ago, the fossil was dubbed Homo longi, or Dragon Man. Some researchers propose that it represented not just a new species, but one potentially closer to modern humans than even the Neanderthals. Others argued it might be a Denisovan, another mysterious cousin in the human family, known mostly through DNA rather than bones. But the truth is, no one knows for sure. The Dragon Man doesn't quite fit anywhere. Its discovery has sparked fierce debate about our evolutionary tree. For decades, human origins were understood through a fairly linear model. Homo erectus gave rise to various offshoots like Neanderthals, who eventually faded as Homo sapiens spread across the globe. But fossils like Dragon Man challenge that simplicity. They suggest a world where multiple intelligent human species lived side by side, competing, interbreeding, coexisting, or disappearing without a trace. And what makes the Dragon Man so haunting is not just what it tells us about the past, but what it suggests we still don't know. If this skull remained hidden for nearly a century and undiscovered for 140,000 years, how many others lie buried beneath silt, bone, and time? How many branches of our family tree have yet to be found? The Dragon Man is not myth or rumor. It's bone and silence. A face from a forgotten lineage staring forward with no voice, no artifacts, no culture left behind. Just a skull, impossibly old, impossibly human, and possibly something else entirely. The further we dig, the more the past resists us. These artifacts, real, examined, and preserved, don't just fill gaps in history. They open new ones, crafted by human hands, buried with intention, but left without explanation. Some were hidden, some were displayed. All were forgotten until we uncovered them, still asking the same question: why? We may never truly understand what these objects were meant to do or say, but their silence speaks loudly. And if this is what survives, what didn't? If this journey stirred something in you, let it echo further. Like the video, share it with others, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more mysteries still waiting to be unearthed. When you're ready, the next story is just a click away.